Started. So thank you all very much for joining us today. Hopefully you can all hear me. I'll ask in chat too in case anybody can't. My name is Buzzy Nielsen. I'm the program manager for library support and development services at the State Library of Oregon. I think I'm about 2.5 months in on this job. So but definitely taking a crash course and stuff. And until before then, I was at the Crook County Library, and I am joined today by Arlene. Arlene, are you on?
Yes. Hi, everyone.
And yeah.
And I can introduce myself. I'm a consultant also at the State Library.
Perfect. Great. And what we want to talk to you a little bit about today is just we are in the very fortunate position to be able to work with all of you and to see all of the wonderful things that you do. Actually, every day, Arlene kind of goes through the news and your Facebook posts and all kinds of things to keep us informed about what all is going on. And I've got to say, on behalf of the library support team, we're really impressed at all of the really amazing things you're doing during these COVID times, both adapting your services, thinking of new services, and also just the fact that you're able to keep on going on is pretty incredible. So we just wanted to highlight a few of those points today, a few of the things that are happening in all the different kinds of libraries in the state. And hopefully at the end, some of you might have some things that you'd like to share about what's going on in your library too. So I'll just launch into things. So I really appreciated this quote from the Albany director, Eric. He is from an article in the Albany Democratic Herald in June. We've had to communicate to the patrons that this will not be the library that they are used to. There will not be toys in the children's area, and there will not be places for patrons to sit and hang out. The library is usually like a living room for anyone to come and just be, but that will not be the case for a long time. And I know this is a really hard thing to have to tell patrons. And like I said, we've been seeing all the different ways that you've all been communicating with your patrons and kind of letting them know that things are different right now, but we're still here for you. And I think Eric really encapsulated that pretty well with this quote. So we are going to be talking about all the interesting things that many of you are doing, but we do want to emphasize, like, we know what you're doing now is enough. We're hoping, if you would like to get inspiration from this, or you just like to just kind of hear what other people are doing, that's great, but we don't want you to feel pressured like you're not doing enough. We know that many of you are stretched very thin. Some of you are down staff, some of you are down hours. And we know that you're all doing the best you can, and we appreciate what you are doing. So we just hope that maybe this will give you just a little bit of inspiration. So just wanted to preface our talk with that. So as I mentioned before, before I was in this job, a few months ago, I was the director of the Crook County Library in Prineville. And so I, like many of you, was having to think about how do we reorganize library services for COVID times. And I have to admit, on the left side of the screen there is a picture of the Waldport Public Library. And I noticed this, and I have to admit, I was very jealous of Waldport because they have an old bank building, and they have this nifty little way to transfer materials. And I have to admit, a little jealous, but we have seen a lot of innovation in this regard, both in terms of like how you're doing curbside pickup, how you're delivering your programs. So as mentioned on the left, that's the Waldport Public Library. On the right side, that is the Night Library. They have a great old building, and they adapted one of their old windows to also be a pickup window, kind of like that. We've just seen a lot of examples of this. One of the things that did happen during the pandemic actually is that the Deschutes Public Library has turned 100 years old. I'm not sure if anybody here is from Deschutes Public Library, but happy centennial. And they actually, for their centennial, have been making a list of 100 different ways to use the library that people can still do during the pandemic. And we have definitely seen those 100 different ways used in all of the libraries of all the types around the state. We know that a lot of you are really working hard to make sure that you can still get materials into people's hands. These are just a few examples here. At the Oak Creek Elementary School, they have a book delivery program that they're doing for students to make sure that their students still have materials both for school and for pleasure reading. The image in the middle of the screen is from the Porterford Public Library, and you can see that's a book drop. They actually modified their book drop to be 2 ways so that they could pass materials between it. And then on the right side of the screen is an example from the Cornelius Public Library of a pop-up library. They went to a park and they had a bunch of materials that people could look through. So just various clever ways of making sure that people can still get materials, but that it is a safe process for both the public and the staff and volunteers. Another really great example from Susan Stone at Portland Public Schools is they had quite the operation to get materials out to people that they could just drive up and pick up. So you can see a couple of examples on the screen here of happy students with their bags of books. And on the left side of the screen is their staging area. I'm sure that a lot of you that are doing curbside hold pickup are familiar with having some staging areas. So just a really good example here at Portland Public Schools of just looking at their processes and just finding ways to make sure they can still be serving their patrons. And we're also seeing a lot of work. It's just not just collection materials. A lot of the libraries around the state are working on making sure to get things into people's hands of all kinds. So on the right side, we've actually seen quite a few libraries, public libraries that have been doing craft kits. So I know the Klamath County, this particular image is from the Baker County Library. I know the Umatilla Public Library and the Klamath County Library have also been doing those, along with many, many others, Sweet Home, others. So just kits that people can take home and use. And then on the left side of the screen there is a screenshot from the Oregon State University Library's Library of Things. They have been doing a great job promoting the many, many different just equipment that they offer to students. And a lot of this equipment is stuff that a lot of the students rely on for connectivity. Students who aren't able to come onto campus, they may or may not have the equipment they need, and OSU Libraries has been doing a great job lending out equipment too. Story times. We have I know a lot of you are doing online story. A lot of the public libraries are doing online story times. I have on here just 3 examples of story times. So on the left is, from left to right is Crook County Library, the McMinnville Public Library, and then the Woodburn Public Library. And libraries have been using a number of different avenues for delivering story times. Some libraries are pre-recording their story times and then posting them on various social media. Other ones are doing live story times, usually either through Facebook or YouTube. It's a lot of, and it's one of the things I know that I've appreciated too is sometimes it's hard to see what your colleagues are doing without actually physically going there. But one of the, I think the kind of exciting things about the pandemic, the results of the pandemic moving things online, is that we're actually able to see what various other libraries are doing, how they're doing story time, how they're doing adult programming, how they're doing book clubs, and story time is just one example of that.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk about the next few slides here. Of course, one of the great things that we're seeing libraries able to do is take their existing programs and their cool things that they're doing and finding ways to make them work in the virtual environment. So one of the examples is the Deschutes County Library has a program as part of their outreach for law libraries, because they also service the county law library. They have a program, Lawyer in the Library, where they are able to schedule, their patrons are able to schedule appointments with lawyers. And that was usually happening within the library facility. So they've been able to successfully migrate that to virtual appointments. Another example is just, how do you do book sales in this environment? And so we found one example from the Oregon College of Oriental Medicine that they had an annual book sale where they just had their students kind of, drop by the library and just pick out books, but they decided to move that online and just set up a forum for them to be able to request books. So again, just, the things that we always do, but trying to find ways to do them in a new and different way. Also, one of the communities in Pendleton, where we have both Blue Mountain Community College and the Pendleton Public Library, got together to put together a virtual book club. And what is great about this is that they're collaborating for everyone in the community to be able to participate. So what they've done is they've set up virtual discussions both in the software that's being used by students at the college in their Canvas platform, but they've also set up equivalent Zoom meetings that people from the public and might be Pendleton patrons can also access. So, and then they've just put together a schedule that allows them to read a couple chapters at a time and then go into these discussions. So a great opportunity to, reach out to other libraries that are in your community, kind of use a shared set of resources and maybe, do things a little bit differently for what works for your particular constituents, but also share some of the workload associated with putting things together. So that's a great example of that. Let's see. And then with online library cards, of course, many libraries, particularly public libraries that have their patrons need to sign up for their library cards. They need to come into the library and provide documentation and that kind of thing. So what we've seen in COVID times is that a lot of libraries are expanding their patrons' ability to apply for library cards and get, online library cards, making that process a little bit easier so they can access all of the virtual resources that libraries are offering. And also, as part of that is just, putting those services, using the opportunity to expand some of the services that are being offered online. The example on the left is from the Clackamas County Law Library. They were able to work with a vendor to provide their library users with remote access to tools that they would normally have to come into the library to use. So, one of the great opportunities of this time is that vendors are being a little bit more flexible in the way that they're allowing libraries to provide their services. So it's a great opportunity to reach out to vendors and talk to them about that. In the middle, we have a set of videos from the Treasure Valley Community College, which basically just highlights some of the resources that they have there at the library, just, using video as a way to highlight some of the things that that people have and showing them how to do it in an easy way. And I know lots of libraries have moved to that format to show how to work in the virtual world remotely with using videos, which I think is a great way for people to follow along. And then on the right is another example of an opportunity to expand access. People who maybe normally come into the library to read a newspaper can get expanded access to news resources. And the folks in Washington County Cooperative were able to work out an agreement with the publisher, with the Portland Tribune and that publisher to provide access through online library cards so people can continue to read that news source. And then also just those services that we have in terms of reference and in-depth research consultation. Of course, we already had Answerland as a service offered by the State Library. But what we've really seen in the last months is a great expansion of the partners that we have working with that service. The service was kind of shrinking a little bit prior to COVID times, and of course has exploded again as people can use that platform to really provide a more robust opportunity to interact with their library users. The other thing that's happened as a result is we've been able to expand some some of the services. With that expansion of partners, we've been able to expand the service to be able to provide Spanish language reference service through that service. And so that's a really great opportunity. That was just a wonderful opportunity to bring more volunteers to help staff that program. And then we also notice many libraries, particularly in the academic world, are using tools to help schedule research consultations, much in the same way you might have met with students in person in the library. You can still do that in virtual ways, and using tools to schedule appointments, to set up Zoom meetings or phone calls or whatever method works best for those students. And this example is from Lynn Benton Community College, which they put together just a simple form to have their students fill out their preference for what time they want to schedule the appointment, what are, a basic information about what they need help with, and what platform they prefer Zoom or over the phone.
All right, and back to me. We've also been seeing a lot of you making efforts to close the digital divide. People's inequitable access to digital resources and to internet has really been in stark relief as a result of the pandemic, and we've seen libraries of all types doing work to help make sure that their patrons still have access to the necessary resource. So I mentioned before that the OSU libraries are offering equipment. We've also seen a lot of you expanding your access to things like Wi-Fi, or loaning laptops and other equipment even for longer periods of time. The right side of the screen there, it's just an example of a sign from the Lebanon Public Library of their Wi-Fi, just advertising the fact that, hey, you can come park in our parking lot, you can use our Wi-Fi. Actually, several of you have even done things like bought repeaters or other ways to extend your signal out farther into your parking lot. Many libraries that previously might have turned their Wi-Fi off at certain times have expanded the hours that the Wi-Fi is available as well, to make sure that people are having access. On the left side of the screen here is another great example of a partnership, this time between a public library and a school library. This is in Hood River County. It's a partnership between the school district and the library district there. And they are having pop-up libraries. So they, you can see there that, and from the back, there's the school is is using one of their vans and taking materials around from both the public and the school libraries to different parts of the county. They actually, in this particular image, their cart on the left there is materials that people can check out. That bin in the middle is where people can return materials. And then the cart on the right is free materials that people can take. So another great example of a partnership we've seen, a multi-type library partnership. Other ways that closing the digital divide, I mentioned lending equipment. The Cook Memorial Library in LeGrand has been doing this as well. They've, like many other public and academic libraries and school libraries, have been lending out Wi-Fi hotspots that people can use. We know that a lot of people rely on their public or school or academic library for their internet access. And as a result, many of you have stepped up to get hotspots, and also loan out equipment, as I mentioned before. On the right side of the screen there is one of the laptops that Cook Memorial Library lends out to their patrons. Libraries, we all know that libraries are more than books, of course, and there are lots of different ways you have shown that, but there are even more ways that you have shown that during the pandemic here. We've seen many examples of some clever programming that people are doing. Some of it, as Arlene mentioned before, is adapted programming that you were doing before. Some of it is brand new programming. So for instance, the Multnomah County Library has offered a long-running GED program that's helped several people in that county get their GED and then later help them get jobs. They have all been able to adapt that program into an online environment. And again, just showing that libraries can do more than just give you materials. At the North Bend Public Library, down on the South Coast, they have been having online library aerobics. And I gotta say, props to whoever designed their logo. Some 80s theming there, always fun. So they've been doing library aerobics online. And then on the right side of the screen is from the Jefferson County Library District. They have been doing some really wonderful videos, just in addition to story times, but in this particular case, book recommendations for people. So lots of examples of things that different libraries are doing. We've also seen a lot of you move even more into virtual spaces. Both actually literally in this case. So again, an example from the Cook Memorial Library in LeGrand of a digital children's room, a virtual room. We've seen a lot of examples of these as well. This particular one, I believe, is made using Google tools. And if, unfortunately, this image, you can't do this, but if you were to actually access this from the Cook Library, you can actually click on various things on this and get access to different resources. So for instance, the Overdrive and Libby icons there, if you click on them, it'll take you over to Library to Go to access the homework help, all kinds of different things.
Okay, and yet another thing, what libraries like to do is they like to pull together displays in library buildings to highlight books for different themes, given different months, celebration months, and that kind of thing. Well, here's an example of Portland Community College that has done that in the virtual environment. So a virtual library display. And I think the thing that's really great about this is it captures the spirit of how you do a display, while focusing specifically on online resources. So this particular display on Native American heritage links to specific audio and ebooks, has videos, and just general websites where people can explore to find more information. So the notion that it really is a virtual display because all of the resources that are in that display are all accessible through that display. So I think that's a really good example. And they've done, Native American Heritage Month this month, but in previous displays, they've done voting in elections and all of those timely topics that that libraries like to highlight their resources according to what's in the news or what's in the culture at any given moment. So continuing to do that in the virtual environment seems to be a really great way to do that. So, and then again, more in the digital realm, this is a project at the University of Oregon Libraries. This digital scholarship project translations was a really innovative way to help keep student workers employed during a time when they were not able to actually come into the library. So this project had students who worked for the Dream Lab at the U of O libraries, which is where there's support for digital scholarship in terms of helping students and faculty develop different types of projects in that digital space. So what this project did was take those students that would normally be supporting that work in a lab environment, have them do remote work, and teach them some skills on how to work with older digital collection projects that the center had previously worked in, and help them gain experience in moving those projects into a different platform. So for example, they could take one of the displays that had been set up in a Omeka platform, which is a common digital platform, and have them do the work to help migrate it into a WordPress platform. And again, what that is doing is, helping get those older projects into a more current, more usable display, but it also is helping those students develop the skills that they're going to need to help work with people as they move forward with building these kinds of projects. So it's a skill building, but it also is, giving them the experience of doing project management in a remote work environment. So I thought this was a really great example. And we certainly have heard of other ways that libraries are really finding their student work, academic libraries finding their student workers to be able to find opportunities for them to do remote work and still really support the work of the library, things like doing catalog cleanup and that kind of thing. So, but this one is a really beautiful example. I highlighted the link is there in the PowerPoint, and which we'll make available after the session. And I encourage you to kind of it's a really nicely laid out webpage that shows the variety of different things that the students were able to work on. And of course, you know, the opportunity to continue to have policies that might be a little slow in getting implemented, having discussions about how to implement new ideas in a community, like the elimination of library fines, is one of the things about the pandemic, is that, you know, it provides an opportunity to, in some cases, accelerate that conversation because of the situation and difficulty in having libraries get having materials get returned in a timely manner. It has in several communities, you know, fast forwarded that conversation and helped have the policy change to either reducing or eliminate fines, both in Coos and Curry County, which have a shared catalog system down on the South Coast, but also in Multnomah County as well, which is a really big deal given the size of Multnomah County's service area. And then, you know, just the opportunity to really look at specific types of users, like, you know, we know that library fines are particularly harmful for having children be able to use the library. So the notion that you can implement a program that would, you know, use the opportunity of not being able to get library materials returned to actually remove those fines and have people be able to come in to use the library again. So that was done in the Pendleton Public Library.
There's a lot of, as Marlene mentioned, there's a lot of really important work that you've still been able to do, including really advancing library services, not just during the pandemic, but after the pandemic too. One of the really amazing things that we saw happen is that the public libraries in Clatsop County, Astoria, Seaside, and Warrenton, were actually able to create a resource sharing network where they can share materials among each other. And they're able to accomplish this during the pandemic, which is a really amazing feat. So it's called the Library Services Northwest Cooperative. And I know that the library directors there did a lot of work. This has actually been a project that they've been working on for several years, and they were still able to advance it, even with the limits that the pandemic was putting on them. So props to those three libraries. We're seeing all kinds of other ways that libraries are supporting other institutions and other people in their communities too. These are just a couple of the images on this screen are just a couple of examples of public libraries that are supporting students and parents. So on the left side there is an image of the Curry Public Library in Gold Beach on the coast. Their program called Hive, which allows students who aren't able to access the internet at home, it allows them a safe place where they can be physically distanced. You can see the guards that are set up there among the cubicles, where they can actually work on their schoolwork during the day. And they actually got a grant to do this, so there are actually staff who are there to assist the students as well. A partnership with this, again, another partnership with the school district. Also, another example is the Early Learning Hub of Clackamas County and the public libraries in Clackamas County set up a texting service for parents to get ideas on how to keep their children occupied. Especially this particular one is focused on children under the age of 6. They sign up for the text. They can get they get activities. They get information on early literacy and other important practices for when children are young to help them learn later on. Really great service. And I really want to give a shout out to all the teacher librarians out there. We know that teacher librarians have been really, really critical sources of technical support in the schools that they are serving. In a lot of cases, teacher librarians are the Zoom or the WebEx experts. Many cases, they are the people who kind of guinea pig these projects to figure out how can I teach in this environment, because librarians are already so technologically inclined. Teacher librarians were naturally people who were able to experiment with these technologies and therefore help all of the other teachers and students in their school districts by really pioneering the use of remote technology to provide instruction. So kudos to all the librarians involved in that too. We've also we've heard a lot of times that while we do need to be physically distant from each other, it's still important to get outside and keep yourself active. And we've seen lots of examples of libraries doing this. So for instance, the libraries in Lincoln County have been partnering with the Oregon Department of Fisheries and Wildlife to offer fishing equipment for kids. We also, the Oak Lodge and Gladstone libraries in Clackamas County are offered a seed library. The time of year right now, not quite right, but they were doing this during the spring and summer, and people were able to take advantage of that too. We, I don't know about the areas where you live, but I know here in Bend where I live, we saw a lot more gardening activity than we do usually because, again, people were encouraged to get outside, and Oak Lodge and Gladstone were able to support that kind of activity. Klamath County also partnered with the Oregon State University Master Gardeners program to do gardening trivia online. Another example of both a program that they were able to move to an online format, but also a partnership and a way to get people outdoors. The picture you see there is an example of a story walk that the Eugene Public Library put up. This particular one is a bilingual story walk. For those of you who don't know, a story walk is basically kind of a deconstructed book that you're then able to put in sign holders and place in somewhere like a park or a walkway. You place a page a little, few feet or a few hundred feet away, depending on how far you want to make it. And really another great example for parents to be able to take their children to kind of experience a story in a different way. We've seen a few different examples of these as well.
So again, with the partnership piece, a lot of what libraries do is help host events that, something like fairs that bring together different resources in the community together for people to learn more about them. One of the examples here is in Jackson County. Obviously, there was a lot of interest in resources in emergency situations down there during the wildfires that we were experiencing in September. So Jackson County put together one of these resource fairs, but they did it in a virtual environment and bringing together, different community resources to help with planning for earthquakes, first aid, all of, what to do around pet safety, that kind of thing. So doing what libraries do, but in a virtual environment and in a, particular need given what was happening in that community. Another example of what libraries have been doing, we do play a role in documenting the history of our communities. And we've seen several libraries, particularly those in academic or research libraries that have archival collections, really recognize that we're in very unique times and we really want to do things to help document what people are experiencing during this time. So the example we have here documenting COVID-19 at OHSU, I think is a particularly interesting project because it's documenting a community that has a unique perspective because of people working as students and also healthcare workers in the hospital there at OHSU. So, and a really important perspective to capture. And so the library's archival collections are doing proactive work to gather some of those stories to build into the archival collection. And something similar is also happening at the Oregon Historical Society, a little bit more, general, your experience across Oregon, again, trying to collect those stories and what they think, what individuals are thinking about the pandemic, not only to document the history, but also to help people, think about what they are experiencing right now and what that might help fill some time in terms of activity and that kind of thing. So here's the example from from the Historical Society that's also collecting those those stories. And we know of other local libraries that are thinking about this as well, but it's really nice to think about, we're still able to take that role of, kind of being not always pushing our resources out, but also bringing in those stories to help people in future generations understand the times that we're in. Oh.
You also sorry about that. You also served a really important role in democracy. So we know that many public libraries and schools in a lot of places already act as ballot drop sites, but we saw even more of that this year. So there were a lot of new libraries that were acting as ballot drop sites. Some of them put out drop boxes outside their buildings. Other ones actually use their book drops as ballot drop sites. But either way, really important contribution that helped contribute to a really very high turnout election for Oregon. You've even been supporting democracy for cats in some cases. So this is an example here from the Westland Public Library. Westland has really done a great pivot to doing a lot of online videos about different topics, and like their Westland Public Library News here. They did a news story about the election between the Republicans and the Democrats. Really fun if you have an opportunity. Again, we have a linked out to that video too. So just supporting democracy both literally and figuratively. And kind of in sum, you've all been doing a lot of really amazing work. We've given some examples here today. We know that there's lots of other examples that many of you can share. But we're hoping that there's light at the end of the tunnel, or in this case, there's a library at the end of that rainbow. This is from the Forest Grove City Library. So we really appreciate everything that you've been doing, and we want you to know that. And we also want you to know that the library support staff here at the State Library, we are here to support you in whatever way we are able to. So if you'd like to learn more about some of these things that our libraries are doing, we are happy to talk to you. You can certainly talk to Arlene and me, but we have other staff like as well who can talk to you about some of these things. So with that, we are happy to take any questions as well. So.
And just to say one more time that we're going to make the PowerPoint available along with the recording of this session. And that PowerPoint does link out to a lot of the things that we featured here. So you can spend some more time kind of looking at how the libraries have set up the program, how they're describing it. And in a lot of cases also that has contact information. So you can contact the libraries directly to learn more about what they're doing. And if for some reason that information isn't readily available, you can always reach out to the State Library folks and we'll help get you in touch with the right folks at any individual library. So.
Any questions? Okay, so we'd love to also take this opportunity, if any of you would like to share some of the exciting things that are going on at your library or in your community or something you've seen in another library. Is there anybody who'd be interested in sharing anything like that?
And feel free to do it in chat or you can unmute yourself either way.
Okay, well, thank you all for attending today. Right on, there's one. Let's see, this is Michael Brown said they set up virtual tours for students to see their study spaces prior to making remote reservations. Wow, that's awesome. And Michael is at the University of Oregon Portland Library. That's great, thanks for sharing that. And Taya from the West Slope Community Library mentioned they're excited about their upcoming remodel project. And Thanks for sharing that. And actually, that is something that we have noticed too, is that many of you have taken these opportunities while your buildings are closed to do some remodeling or big kind of capital projects that are kind of inconvenient to do when you have patrons in the building. So we've seen several remodel projects. I think Film Library replaced its roof while it was closed. So definitely I'm excited to see the changes there too. I know a lot of you have been redecorating too, just like moving stuff around, not just for physical distancing, but just taking this as an opportunity to be like, hey, maybe we can really shift this furniture around like we've been planning to do for years and never had the time to do. Anything else anybody would like to share? Oh, and Taya posted a link to their remodel project in the chat. Okay, well, again, thank you all for coming. We really appreciate you taking your, let's see. Question. So Sue from Lower Umpqua Library District asked if any libraries are open to the public. So there definitely are some libraries that are open to the public. I think most of you know that the governor has instituted a 2-week freeze. So there are several libraries that were open to the public that are going to be closed to the public for the freeze, although not all of them are closed. Sue, if you want to contact Arlene or me, we're happy to put you in contact with libraries that are open to the public. Yeah, we definitely do know of some. But again, due to the freeze, many libraries are moving back to curbside or delivery service too. Anything else? Oh, thank you, Michael. Yeah, it's we at the State Library have been really inspired by everything that you're doing. We know you're all working hard. I mean, it's hard just to keep the doors figuratively open, let alone all of these other innovations that many of you are doing. So thank you. All right. Well, again, thank you. As Arlene mentioned, we'll make the slides available. The slides have, in most cases, links to the different projects that we referenced. We'll also make the recording available. That's going to be available on our continuing education LibGuide that we'll send out as well. So again, thank you. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions or comments or just want to chat. So thank you, everyone.
Everyone.